The views and opinions expressed in Media Litter Sandwich do not reflect on the views of the network, station, studio, website, sponsors, guests, hosts themselves, anyone or anything else associated or even not associated with this podcast. Maybe not even the person that said them. In other words, do your own research and do not sue anyone over what is said on this show.
Welcome to Media Litter Sandwich. This episode, we talk about all sorts of media things. Dave, you talk to me about just your reporter experience. You're emanating.
Yeah, we deep dove into some of the national coverage of a couple of events in the last few weeks.
And why some of these media things are doing our mindset. Welcome to Media Litter Sandwich. Things look different and hopefully they sound different. Maybe it'll help, maybe it won't help. We'll see. I'm Toden from Toden.com and this is Media Litter Sandwich. You can find us at MediaLitterSandwich.com. I'm so out of touch. I'm already messing up the name of the show. I'm like, Media Litter Sandwich.
Enunciate.
Yeah, I wonder what I was thinking when I named it Media Litter Sandwich. And so in this episode, we're talking to Dave Herndon. We're talking about recording stuff. Maybe I cover that in the pre-music intro. I'm not quite sure, but a lot of things are a little bit differently. We're going to see how things go. Last episode, I was at Astronomicon. Hopefully the audio turned out. That one's a fun one editing right now.
I can imagine. I was there with one of my side businesses.
Yeah, I was using Podcast Detroit's audio in their studio, and we lost about 15 minutes of the audio. I'm still editing it, so I'm probably do a voiceover in the middle because it's like, hey, this is this studio's audio. This is what you get if you use it, and 15 minutes are missing. It is a convention. Things go crazy at conventions, so not everything's predictable. But that's also why you do backup stuff, and I had a backup audio going to my camera, which I will be using, or did use, since it would already be live while we're recording now. This is why we try to stay to at least semi-evergreen topics, and also getting back into the swing of things.
So we're going to talk about trees?
Evergreen topics meaning, you know what an evergreen topic is.
I do, but does the audience?
What an evergreen topic is, it's not like current. It doesn't have. It'll always be semi-current. Like if you're talking about what you saw in the news today, that's not evergreen because it's old news a week from now.
Right.
But if you're talking about,
so we're not talking about the Pistons and Bulls from last night. We're going to talk about the 2019 Pistons season.
Exactly. Because that's an evergreen topic. If people actually... What sport is that?
Not that I'm advocating for talking about the Pistons, because I haven't seen a game since like 2006.
Okay. I saw a game last season. I thought I had fun.
I haven't seen a Pistons game since the last time they were in the finals.
Okay.
And I haven't seen an NBA game since Kobe Bryant's last game.
For those wondering, this is Dave Herndon, and from...
I work for a local media company. It's a newspaper chain. I really don't want to give the exact name, but we're a small Metro Detroit. The paper I'm at is a small Metro Detroit chain, small Metro Detroit paper, but it's part of a larger chain. I can't specifically talk about my specific job, so I don't want to mention. But we own lots of newspapers across the country.
Right. And I do got some questions for you. I just want to do a little housekeeping. After we just talked about last week's audio. Hopefully this week's audio is going to be better. And also now the things I said was apparently true because I mentioned something about Raw Talk no longer doing audio podcasts. Apparently I was wrong. I did find they were doing audio podcasts. They're just not have to be on the app that I use anymore. But if you want to find mine, I'm on Stitcher, Podbean, Potable, a ton of other stuff. If I'm not on the podcast app that you use, let me know and I'll see if I can get on it. Spotify, maybe I'll be on Pandora one day. Probably not. I did put the application in, though. So today I am at Foundation Hotel using their podcast studio, and we will probably be here for at least the next few months. Nice Heil microphones. This is really cool. I actually got the view of downtown Detroit right in front of me. I got Cobo Hall right to the right. If it's still being called Cobo Hall, I know they just...
As of today, it's not. I mean, it won't be. Today, they made the announcement that they sold the naming rights.
Yep. So it will either be named... it's off of a bank.
It's TCF Bank, but they're
TCF,
merged with another company. And
yeah, the other company bought the naming rights. So it'll either be TCF Center, or if that falls through, then it'll be like Chemical Bank Center.
yeah, that sounds right. Or close to right.
Right. So I'm not a news source. I want to make that clear. I am not a news source. If I get things wrong, just let me know. I don't have a laptop in front of me. I have a couple phones, but I'm not fact checking everything. I'm going to try to be close, but I'm not a news source.
And just for me to cut in, like, it's interesting to me, like, I'm from Michigan, but I'm not from the Detroit area. I grew up in a rural area in southern Monroe County by the state line. Mm-hmm. I've known Cobo Hall my whole life. I had no idea it was actually named after a person. I had no idea where it came from until I was reading an article today in not my newspaper, because we don't cover the city of Detroit proper.
Right.
And I was reading all about it, and I was just like, wow, I've never even heard of this guy.
I knew it was named after a mayor, and I knew there was some controversy around that.
Apparently, he was a very racist guy. He was in office from like 50 to 57. He actually ran on an anti-Negro campaign. And
I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but that was the name of his campaign.
Right, like that's actually like the terminology he used was anti-Negro. Mm-hmm. Like that's not me like paraphrasing. That was his actual terminology. Mm-hmm. And he was a Republican, which in Detroit, I'm and I haven't fact checked this, but very possibly the last Republican mayor elected, going all the way back to 1957.
Wow.
And he died in office.
Huh. Gee, I wonder why. We're not fact checked. We don't know what happened to him. I'm not that interested in it.
Yeah, and I legit don't know. I know what was included in the article from Deadline Detroit is the one I read.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot. Every newspaper I read about it kind of at least gave a couple sentences about, yeah, it's a good thing we're changing the name. And then Metro Times dedicated the article almost to that. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I semi-care about it. But this is supposed to be about the naming of Cobo Hall, the renaming of it, not about who it used to be, but what's currently going on.
Well, but I think part of that is because we don't know exactly what it's going to be named, so they had to fill in the backstory more than the current story.
It's also Metro Times. They're not, for being based around Detroit, they're not the most pro-Detroit paper.
And I'm not going to weigh in on that specifically. Not that I work there either, but
right.
I just never want to run down anybody or a potential possible future employer.
Oh, I totally understand. I call things the way I see them. So I mean, I'm trying. At least I'm trying to. I know in the past I've tried to stay on the fence, but I'm going to be a little more open.
I will gladly talk about specific coverage that I don't like, but I'm not going to speak about organizations.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say Foundation Hotel today has been amazing to me. I just hope this audio turns out because, I mean, they literally just said, okay, there's a studio, go. If you need an engineer, employ your own. I'm tech savvy. I could figure this out. First day in the studio, you don't know how things are going. I got 3 different recordings going on. Hopefully one of them turns out right.
It's a beautiful studio. It's my first time ever in this hotel. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah, it used to be a fire station, and they kept the big doors. They put some. They put some plexiglass behind the door so you don't get like the draft from it. It's beautiful. Everything I've walked around here, it's beautiful. I know they have like a little gallery of a local artist putting their stuff up there.
I'm just looking for the rest of the Ghostbusters.
Well, they got the Detroit Ghostbusters. They got a firehouse or old fire station too, somewhere around here.
That I'm not sure of, but
I know they purchased one. I don't know. I haven't talked to Eric in a little bit about that.
Yeah, I haven't either. I saw him at Astronomicon, but I didn't get a chance to talk to him.
Something that did happen to me today, I want to just mention. YouTube copyright content control or something. YouTube copyright tool. I know it came out last year. It was only for people with 100,000 plus subscribers. Apparently now I have access to it. Basically, what it does is if you're a YouTube creator, you go to your YouTube studio. It's not rolled out for everyone because I've seen a few people trying to find it and they couldn't find it, but I know I have it now. And so in my studio side, it'll have a copyright thing I could click and it will show me all videos that looks like somebody re-uploaded the content I have. Which was very helpful because before it would take me a while, if I'm curious if someone re-uploaded one of my videos, I have to search for that title and see if that one's there. And when you have like 400 or 500 videos up there, it's going to take a while.
Now, as my company's kind of transitioned away from YouTube, and I don't do a lot of my own stuff anymore video-wise.
YouTube's not the destination that it used to be.
Well,
I don't know if there's another alternative. But
It's been a couple of years since I've been like heavy into YouTube, and part of that was when they took down the monetization for smaller channels.
I love this studio. I could wave to people on the street and they wave back.
But
downtown Detroit's so friendly.
Is the re-uploading a big deal? Because as far as I know, I only ever had it happen once. It was with the sports video we did with the Tigers, and it was when Brad Osmus was joking about beating his wife.
Oh.
One of our reporters happened to catch video. As far as I know, he was the only one that caught like the short video. It was when we were using a tout platform that also auto-uploaded to our YouTube channel.
Okay.
And we had some other sports network like steal the video. It was even had our watermark on it and re-uploaded themselves, and they got like 1 million hits on it where we got like 30,000.
Oh, wow.
But it was like, because it was like a 12-second clip, and it only caught the part where he said, "I beat my wife," and then laughed. It didn't catch any of the context. Not that there's ever good context for that.
Right.
But it was clearly said in a joke, and he did apologize for it later when he realized it didn't come off that way. Not that I need to apologize for him, but that's the only video I ever caught of stuff that I worked with that was re-uploaded. So is it a big issue?
I think it depends on however you view it, because if it's your news site, I guess it depends on the company. For myself, I had a video that went viral and that got re-uploaded, a video that we were making money off of, and some of that money was going to charity even. And that one, I didn't like people re-uploading basically because they're taking credit for what we did. It was an entire this viral video, and they're like, "Oh, I like it, I'm going to help spread it." That's not helping spread it. Help spreading is sharing our link, not re-uploading it and acting like it is yours. And especially if they monetized it, that's the parts I had issues with. Now, other things, if you're re-uploading it, like there was one of the videos I found today that was re-uploaded was an event I did, and this one guy who had a TV show in the area, he ran up to me during this event and he goes, "Hey, you're at this event. These creators did this and this. It's fantastic. So and so's here, and he gave me the intro. I thought it was really cool. This guy had a lot of stage presence, and I didn't prompt him to do this. He just did it. Now, he took my 3-minute cosplay video and put it into his show. Should he have told me? Absolutely yes, because I would have got him a higher quality. But unless it was for another client, then I don't have, there's a lot to go in. If it was for a client, that I would have an issue with. But since it was for me, I personally don't care. I just think he should have talked to me, because there was also, because it had my watermarks on it, had all this other stuff. So I'm getting credited. That's why you like having your watermark, because that's your credit.
Right.
And I've had people get mad at me for watermarks. That's why they're there, though.
I guess maybe I misphrased the question.
Okay.
It's always a bad thing when somebody takes your video without you knowing and re-uploads it. I guess I meant, does it happen a lot? Because I've worked with probably thousands of videos over several channels I've worked with, and I've only ever noticed it happening once to my stuff. Is it maybe because most of my stuff was very targeted to a specific news audience? Does it happen a lot more to other people?
I think depending on who it is, it happens a lot more. It totally does. I mean, if it's music and your music's copyrighted and the bots are looking for it, there's a lot of things that can happen. If it's a video, something that you did, like the podcast, someone's re-uploading it. It kind of depends how popular it is, and it also depends if what they're doing with it too. The one thing I like about this tool is it says remember, just because someone re-uploaded your stuff doesn't mean it's a copyright violation, and people need to know that and remember it. However, a lot of people don't know what the copyright rules are, and we could do a whole series on that. I don't want to go into it. And it's also, you don't want to, like, I know for a lot of creators that do get re-uploaded a lot, they straight up say, we don't want to go after everybody, because if we make it a thing that we're going to go after everyone that uses our trademark, then we have to go after everyone. We can't just pick and choose. And some people do some really cool things. Like somebody, I forgot what, well, one example was, I'm trying to remember who was talking about. I think it was one of the Green brothers. They're talking like, hey, some people do some cool stuff. Yeah, if someone does something we don't like, we ask them to take it down. If they don't take it down, then we might go through YouTube, but we won't do any law action, because there's other people that will start subtitling it or dubbing it in another language. That's pretty cool. Or if someone's reviewing something, obviously if it's a straight up good review, straight up like 10 sec, like a 5-minute review or something, that is totally fine and actually not violating your copyright. But if they're watching every second of like some of these React videos where they're actually playing the entire thing, video and audio, then that may rake them. So it kind of depends what people are doing. It's really a case-by-case scenario.
Fair enough.
One of the videos I saw that was re-uploaded by several different people. One person that re-uploaded a video that I did at PenguinCon a few years ago of somebody getting a chip in their hand, an RFID chip, I think that's what it's called. They got that in their hand. This group put it was just by itself, just completely ripped, not trimmed, not edited, just put up there, but the title changed. And apparently they're using my video to support some kind of conspiracy. And that was interesting. I'm still not sure how to take that, but, it has my watermark on it, so cool.
Fair enough. And I didn't mean to hijack your intro. I was just legitimately curious.
Oh, you good. I'm kind of changing up the way we did this before. I'm actually trying to do some segments. So, the opening segment where you kind of talk about a couple sort of current topics, what's going on with you. And then we do some kind of ad, which I actually have that written down. Look at me. I'm trying to be a professional here.
I'm just not used to being the interviewee, and it kills me not to ask questions.
I want to cut. Well, that's fine too. I mean, so, DV Radio, we are back on DV Radio Tuesdays nights at 7 p.m. That's Eastern time. And for all the people that aren't a veteran, but you're currently still in, I know that made no sense. 1900, why does DV Radio always like to give military time and normal time? I don't know. Maybe, but yeah, so 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday nights, they rebroadcast the podcast, and I'm in the chat room, but you can always catch it on CourseToten.com and YouTube.com/TotenK. If you want to hear it first, you can always do that. But if you want to, but some people like being in the chat room and talking to me and asking questions, so that's always really cool. And of course, we all love all the people over at DV Radio. In fact, I'm wearing one of my Dysfunctional Veterans hoodies right now. So, Dave, I do got a couple questions, couple reporting questions. I'm not talking about any of your current stories.
Sure.
You already gave me warnings some things not to ask you, but there's been, it's not been a few weeks, but we're learning more and more some weird stuff going on there. There's a lot of, I hate to use the term fake news because we've talked about that before.
I don't like the term, but it does exist.
Yeah. The stuff with the Covington kids. I've actually stopped listening to several podcasts because information came out about these MAGA Hat wearing teenagers from the school. I mean, I think everyone kind of knows the story. They went to a March for Life, a pro-life rally, and then while they wait for their buses.
Can I give a small opinion on that before we get into specifically the coverage?
Yeah.
First of all, I have no problem with the kids being there. I have no problem with the kids wearing the hats. None of that stuff.
Right.
I mean, I don't agree with it, but that's fine. But for a school field trip, and I realize it's a private school or whatever, but even private schools get some type of federal funding. I don't think that we should be paying for field trips to religious-based events.
Or
And
politically based events.
Well,
because it's a political based thing.
But I get, like, we can't tell the kid, like, don't wear the hat because then we're somewhat violating free speech. But why should, at any level, we give any government funding for a school to then take kids to a religious event? And I realize that private schools get very little government funding, but they do still get a bit, some types of subsidies. And I'm just... because it was a religious rally, like, we shouldn't be funding that stuff.
At this point, I'd like to give a shout out to Missy Mills, who did our disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. And in our disclaimer actually says the opinions and views might not even belong to the people that say them, because I often like to play devil's advocate. So I like that we put that instead of saying, hey, your views and opinions solely only belong to the people that say them. Not always, because I don't flip-flop. I argue both sides for a more rounder discussion.
And I fully understand that there's people that don't agree with me, but especially had it been a public school. Mm-hmm. Like
that was a public school. Yeah, that would.
But like, you shouldn't be sending, the separation of church and state.
Right.
I have no problem with the kids going. Right. But if any federal funds or even state funds were used to fund it, I'm against that, and I don't know for sure that they were.
Well, my questions have to do with the media coverage on it.
I figured it was, but I just wanted to. And if you edit that out, I won't complain. But
I don't want to edit anything. I'm trying to make this easier on myself.
I understand.
So these students were at this thing, and they have to meet at a place for the bus, and while they're waiting there, one group Black Hebrew Israelites started yelling at them. They did not, instead of retaliating or saying anything, they started doing school chants. Some Native American activists, one particular that actually doesn't live too far from here.
Ypsilanti.
Yeah, Ypsilanti, even though he's supposed to be part of the Omaha tribe in Nebraska, he lives over in Ypsilanti. They go over there. He claims that he was trying to intervene, and he still says that the students were it was them that he was more concerned with, and he walks right up to him, starts drumming down the line, then walks into this one student's face and drums right in his face, and he stood there, and he didn't do anything, didn't say nothing back to him. At one point in the 2-hour-long video, you could see him tell another student, don't even interact with them, trying to, they're not trying to do anything, but of course people say stuff like, this kid has a punchable face because he's just standing there wearing a Make American Great hat, kind of smirking. So because he's a white male from a private high school wearing a Make American Great Again hat, and he has a smile on his face, people still say a lot of things. The original media coverage claimed that the students surrounded the Native American group, and they were mocking them, yelling stuff. That's not the case. At least if it is the case, show me some, show out some evidence. There's been third-party investigations. Anyways, the truth is out that these kids, I shouldn't say kids, I should say students, because that's kind of, considering that they're not being treated like minors, they're not. The media totally messed this up. I'm not sure what happened. I don't know what happened. Someone claimed that these students were chanting a bunch of stuff, so a lot of false narratives went out there, and these students were just ridiculed even when the truth came out. A lot of news sources didn't apologize or didn't run correctional stories or did it in a really weird way, just showing quotes saying that, well, so-and-so says this is what happened, but unquoted, they say, well, the students that surround him, they claim this happened, and it's just...
Well, and that's part of my problem with the coverage. Mm-hmm. Like, clearly, the initial reports were just flat out wrong. Mm-hmm. Like, and to be honest, I don't know who the first one to report on it was. I didn't pay that much attention.
Right, the first one I saw was a Now This, which... That and BuzzFeed, I don't consider real news sources.
But,
maybe they are. I don't know. I never thought they were.
And it's different to everybody because you never know who's going to break something. But I honestly don't know who the first person to cover this was. But by the time it became a national story, everybody was reporting basically the same thing, and it was wrong. Just flat out, it was wrong. And unfortunately, that does happen from time to time. A reporter's only as good as their sources. If their sources say this or that, and I don't know if the first people only saw small clips of this video or whatever, but it didn't take long, a day or two before the entire video was released.
Right. I think it was less than 48 hours because when I first heard it, I turned up the volume because it was cringeworthy. It was definitely cringeworthy, the original video, and I turned up the volume just because something didn't seem right to me. And I couldn't hear the things that first, I don't like videos that just are B-roll with words on them. For a news story, give me a voiceover, give me a full article underneath it, but I don't like videos that are just text over B-roll and then music with it. And now they're saying they were yelling stuff, so I turned up the volume. I didn't hear it. I thought it was weird, so I Google searched it, especially because everyone was talking about this. And I couldn't find any evidence. And people were like, look at the 2-hour video. So I watched the 2-hour video. The following day is when I started seeing all these people like, did you watch the full video? Because this was wrong.
Well, and the problem is we quickly learned it was wrong. And many of the media organizations, and I'm not going to say specifics because we all know which ones did and didn't.
Right. And there was multiple.
But many of them, rather than issuing a correction or an apology, actually tried to dig into the student's past. And there was actually another video, I don't know if you saw this one or not, that was allegedly filmed earlier in the day. It makes sense that it was. The kids were wearing the same clothes, of several of the Covington students like being rude and obnoxious to other kids in the area.
Right, and that was also proven that wasn't the Covington High School, which huge props to them, because if that was my high school, we would have totally been doing stuff, like I know when we went to Washington D.C. When I was in middle school, we weren't like these kids. We were kids, and we would say things and do things and just happy to be out of school. I can't believe that that these students acted the way they did, meaning well behaved. Well, I still don't know what, even if they did act like that, I still don't know how that was a news story.
Well, and my point with that other video, and then to be honest, I didn't realize it had been found not to be true. But whether it's true or not had no bearing on the coverage that was given that we know was wrong.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter what you did earlier in the day or what you did last week. If the coverage that says you did this, and then we find out you didn't do this, you still need to correct that. And most places didn't, and I have a severe problem with that. And to be honest, it's not. I think it wouldn't have been a big deal had these places said, "Hey, we screwed up." If it was a print journalism, you run a correction. Hey,
right.
The problem is it went everywhere quick, and there was large front page newspaper coverage. There was hours upon hours of radio and TV coverage.
Right, and they've covered it week after week. Like, they had updates. I'm not sure why it became a news story in the first place. Kids acted not in a tolerable way, and even if that's wrong.
Well, and I think it had everything to do with the hats.
Right.
Because, and let me get this out there, I tend to lean liberal, but the liberal media screwed this one up. I guarantee you, without knowing for sure, but I guarantee you it was one of the liberal-leaning sites that broke the news. Initially, and then once it breaks, it becomes a story everywhere because of this, that, and the other. But since they got it wrong, everybody just compounded off of that, and then nobody wanted to own up to we screwed up.
Okay, I'm gonna keep moving this a little bit forward because there's two things I definitely want to talk about this. I want to talk about. Now they're suing some of these several media outlets.
Yeah, the Tribune Company and maybe a couple others.
Washington Post as well as the one I was reading today. And keep in mind, this podcast was recorded on February 20th, so a lot of stuff has happened since then. But they are taking action, and oh man, the comments are crazy. The comments, people are digging their feet and saying, "I don't care." That kid had a smirk, he had a bully smirk on his face.
and to be honest, like, and I'm not an attorney. Get that up right. I'm not an attorney. But
I'm not anything. There's no reason.
But I really see. I don't see them necessarily winning $250 million.
No, they'll settle.
But I could see them winning a few $1 million per student, or at least for the main that main student. And I don't remember his name, but the main kid that was in like every photo and all that.
So that brings me to my main question. This is one of the main reasons I brought this up is when you're if you were covering a story like this, would you have blurred these students' faces since they are known minors?
I wouldn't have.
Okay.
It was in public. Mm-hmm. So like running their faces and all that is perfectly fine.
Okay.
Because it was in public. It was at a public event. You have absolutely no expectation of privacy.
Right.
But I also would have fact checked a little more before I ran the story. But no, it was in public. Like running their faces and all that, or even naming them, perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. Because it was in public. It wasn't like you went into the school and had to worry about permission. Like they were on public streets. They were in, events like that. So from that side, the media didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
But again, they screwed up everything else with the story, but not that.
Okay. Yeah, because a few people were asking about that. I was curious. Because especially all these people talking about wanting them doxxed, and these students had death threats, or school had death threats and bomb threats, and it's just
and that's why
they have a case,
and that's why I think they'll win their case, because the coverage turned out to be wrong. Mm-hmm. There was very little attempt to actually correct it, and it did cause them emotional stress and harm.
Okay. Yeah. Another thing that happened recently is, and I think this could be evergreen because I think this is something every couple of years people bring back up. The sailor that there was a sailor that recently passed away that claims, I'm not saying he was the person in the iconic picture where the sailor grabs.
Actually, he was.
Are we sure? Because there's like so many people that claim to be that person.
There have been many of them that claimed it, but they actually used photo recognition software and proved it was him.
Okay.
Several years ago, but.
Okay, because this is one of those things where even if I did quote unquote fact check all these things, there's been so many people claiming that they're the sailor, that they're that nurse, and there's so many different stories about that are completely contradictory.
They used photo recognition software. Okay. They actually identified the sailor and the nurse.
Okay,
she died, I believe it was 3 or 4 years ago. She was in her 90s as well. Mm-hmm. And then he died last week. Okay. Earlier this week.
Because I'm reading the current stories, like I heard totally different stories, but it's also because so many people have claimed to be this iconic.
Right. Well, and
yeah, I guess you could say couple.
Well, and if you were a World War II sailor and you want to tell your grandkids something, wouldn't you maybe spin the truth a little bit?
Right. This is another one of those things. That the comments are amazing. The statue. I guess there's a statue based off this photograph, which I didn't know. Where they vandalized it and wrote hashtag or # me too.
Yeah, and to be honest, like I get it. Like if you look
it's a different time.
If you look at it through today's standards, nobody would get away with doing that.
Right.
Like the actual, like just randomly grab somebody on the street and kiss them.
No one ever would hear about it. I mean, I don't know how this picture ever became iconic, but it's really cool and totally makes sense. It's totally an iconic picture. I don't even know who the photographer was, dude.
I don't know off the top of my head. But it was a spur of the moment thing, and yeah, you can, if you look at it through 20th century,
Right.
But yeah, you could argue that it was an assault. Mm-hmm. But I honestly, and this is purely my opinion, but I honestly don't think either one of them was thinking anything like that.
Right. It was totally a different time. And I mean, I'm reading different things. One thing says his girlfriend's actually inside the frame further away, and he actually went on to marry the person that's further away, that's also in the photograph a little bit further away. I mean, I don't know any of this.
Yeah, I don't either, because like, and until like it came out that he died, like to be honest,
we forget about it. It comes up every couple
so often, and you don't think about it again. But I can honestly tell you that I've seen that photo periodically my entire life, and I've never once given it a thought of like, wow, he's assaulting her.
Right.
Like I don't get the vibe from it. I don't get the tone, and I wasn't there. Like you can't tell everything from a photo, but
right.
I seem to think like this one was a little overblown. But I could be wrong, but I mean, the woman just died a couple years ago, so she had like 70 years to complain.
I'm so Right. And I'm hearing things that, I originally read stories that say they never talked to each other again. And now I'm reading stories saying, oh, they remained good friends. I don't know.
And I'd believe the one about they never talked to each other again because I don't think they knew each other beforehand. It was just a spur of the moment thing. And while that wouldn't fly in today's society, back then it was acceptable at least.
It seems like today's society, even if you did something that would be acceptable today, of course, I'm not sure what that would be anymore.
Handshake. An offer of a handshake.
That could be it. I mean, there's people out there that claim saying hi to a stranger is not appropriate, especially if you're opposite sex. If it's a person of the opposite sex, people claim that that's now inappropriate.
Well, and not to be political, but our own vice president has said he refuses to be alone in the room with a woman. Like there has to be at least somebody else in the room just so that nobody can claim he did anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's watching yourself. So in 10 years or 20 years, and we're seeing that, we're seeing with comedians of all the categories, comedians are facing things. I don't want to go into any of the topics. It's just the media coverage. Can you help me out with some of this media coverage that seems to, there is so much opinionated media coverage, even from newspapers today, not in the opinion section.
There is to a certain extent. And while I can't speak specifically about,
right. Of any particular news.
I can't speak specifically about newspaper coverage in the sense of I don't get it because I would never allow it where I work.
Right.
Now we do get opinions not in the opinion section, and only because I don't run an opinion section.
Okay.
But I do run opinion pieces, and they're clearly labeled. Mm-hmm. But I don't have an opinion section. But
right.
But editorializing a story is when you're trying to cover it as news is terrible to me.
Yeah.
Now the problem is the average John Q. American doesn't necessarily understand the difference when they're watching TV or listening to the radio of a commentary piece and news. Mm-hmm. That they see random person on CNN or Fox News or any other channel has news right in the name of the show. So they assume everything on the show is news. When really probably closer to 90% of the coverage on all of those channels is commentary.
That's okay. BuzzFeed's news now, apparently. I don't know.
But it's commentary. They talk about the news, but they're giving you their spin on it. They're not actually giving you the news.
Right. The Daily Show, people, those numbers, people act like that's a news source.
It's not Walter.
They even say it's not.
It's not Walter Cronkite like staring in the camera and reading you the news.
This week today, that's not it's a news show, but it's not the news.
And at the same time, like the people that are like, oh, I wish we could go back to Walter Cronkite. A lot of people don't realize, like, when he became famous for reading you the news, he wasn't really a journalist anymore. Like, he was just reading a script. Like, other people were doing the work.
And it was also very different because today you watch your anchors, they have personalities. They, it's a different time. Now we look at personalities, we look at relating to people. Then they would just, like the anchorman, they'll just sit there and they would just read the news. I think of Mary Tyler Moore, Ted Baxter. God,
well, and at the same time, though, at the same time, back in that day, there was 3 newscasts a day, 2 newscasts a day. You had a morning news and a nightly news.
Right.
Was there even a morning news? I honestly don't know.
I don't know either. I wasn't quite alive.
But you had a couple newscasts. Once
there was a morning news and there was a night news, and sometimes there was afternoon news.
But it wasn't the 24-hour news cycle we have now, where you've got 30 stations that are running 24 hours of news. You have to fill that with something.
Right.
And unfortunately, people don't see the difference. Like, they can't tell the difference between, somebody reading you a copy of a story I wrote and then somebody reading 6 pieces of that story and then giving their opinion on it. Mm-hmm. And that's a real problem because when you actually explain it to most people, they're like, that makes sense. But it's a big difference. And you've got Facebook and Twitter and all the social media too. And those are great tools to get news and information from, but you can't believe everything you see.
Right.
Like the people reporting this, and yes, I used air quotes.
Why do we have to do research when we're watching what we assume is news?
Right. Well, and I have this happen to me quite often, where I will get either tagged in a Facebook post or somebody will send me like, hey, I saw this on Facebook or whatever. It's like, this goes back to when I was covering the city of Lincoln Park. I'll give you an example. It happened at least once a week where somebody would call me and be like, hey, there's somebody shooting, there's gunshots down the street. Police are surrounding a house. So I'd call the police chief or the deputy chief or whoever was on duty at the time, be like, hey, blah, 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 this is going on. I covered the city of Lincoln Park for over 2 years. 3 times there was actually an active shooter situation when I checked on these. And I guarantee you I checked on at least 2 a month.
Wow.
And this was people like claiming to be eyewitnesses. Like, I saw it happen. And so I'd get 2 or 3, maybe more a month. And 3 times in 3 years or 2 years, it turned out to be true.
Wow.
Like,
well, to be honest, not everything shows up in the blotter too, because I know sometimes I see something like, "Hey, Dave, the other day I saw this. Do you know anything about this?"
No, and
I hate doing that sometimes too.
And I fully get that. And clearly, no reporter is going to see every single crime that happens in a city,
especially when you're covering 20 cities by yourself.
But if you call the police chief and be like, "Hey, there's reports of an active shooter right now," and he's like, "Well, nobody called us, or we're not out there." Or like, let me check and he'll get back to you 20 minutes. Like, nothing happened.
Right.
Like, that's just people.
Be a firework, and you don't know.
Well, and it could be, but like I'm saying, when people would actually call me and be like, hey, I saw somebody pull a gun, and he's standing outside a house like screaming at his ex-wife. Like, okay, and the police never once were called or anything. You just decided to make a Facebook post. Like, so it either didn't happen or.
Well, I remember. There was an incident at an apartment complex I was living in, and somebody shot a gun in their apartment. And in fact, one of my pictures ended up on in a newspaper and stuff.
Hey, you're more than free to talk about it. I just can't talk about my stuff.
Okay. Well, what I'm thinking is that, the next day I'm asking, hey, did you see what was going on? And they're like, I've heard stories of like terrorists running around with the AK-47s, and they're trying to tell me. I was like, I talked to the cops that night. I know it wasn't that. Oh, you're missing the whole thing, man. I saw everything. Really? I was out here in my boxers because the police almost kicked down my door and woke me up, which I wasn't happy about. And they yelled at me because they're saying the gunshot didn't wake you up. No, I slept through. No, I've been to Iraq and I've heard worse. You kicking the door to make my whole apartment, it felt like the building shaking, that almost put me in a bad place. You almost put me in a bad place by shaking my entire building by trying to kick down a deadbolt door. Woke me up versus a single gunshot. But that's beside the point.
Right.
But yeah, I heard
so you can
so
even
many
see
things
that.
about that.
Now imagine like you're the news reporter and you're getting those reports from 8 cities at a time every day. And then everybody wants to know why you didn't track down every single thing they call you about, especially when most of the ones you try to track down are either not true or it's way different than what they're trying to say.
Right.
And I'm not saying that Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any of that stuff isn't great, because it is.
Right.
But you can't believe, that's just a random person posting something. They haven't been through training. They don't know.
Right.
And most of the time they haven't checked with an official or whatever and gotten what actually happened. Because let's face it, I drove by a bar a couple weeks ago, 2 o'clock or so in the morning. I see a car flipped over and the car flipped over in front of the building and it had smashed in the side of the building. As a journalist, I'm like, oh, I wonder what happened. I should call the police chief. But as a passerby, I'm like, hey, look, some drunk guy flipped his car. But and this
but
one,
you never know. You
well,
just kind of assume.
And this one did turn out to be a drunk guy. Well,
right.
We don't know it was a drunk guy because he ran away. By the time they caught him, he wasn't drunk, but he might have been. Everybody else in the car was drunk, so. But the driver ran. But it could have been a medical accident. But as if somebody drove by, snapped that picture, and then sent it to me and said, "Hey, some drunk guy hit a building," and I didn't check on that, that's my fault then for reporting false information if it's not true. It's my name that goes on the story. And therefore, it's my fault if it's wrong.
And I really do wonder, I know a lot of reporters have been laid off, well, in recent years, but a couple weeks ago, there was a mass layoff of several of a big company and several other companies of reporters. And I find it interesting that it was so close to the Covington kids incident. I know there's other incidents too that were falsely reported, or information that was later to be found false, that were major stories. I'm trying not to hit every single one of them, but there was a few, and I'm really wondering if any of that was tied together. I assume this stuff was coming, but
Yeah, absolutely not. And I do have a little bit of inside information on that one that I can't share.
okay.
One, because my company was one of the ones that attempted to buy part of one of this other company.
Okay.
So I can't talk about any of that.
Okay.
But these layoffs were coming. And most of them were buyouts. They weren't actual layoffs.
Okay.
But they were coming. Nobody knew exactly how many. But they were in the works for a while, and it's part of the company trying to pare down so it could possibly be sold.
Well, I hope the best comes to those people, and there's a lot of things going on, and if they need to learn how to code, they can.
But for the most part, if something like that were to happen,
That was meant as for those that know the learn to code meme. That was meant as a joke. Well, originally it was meant to mock people that told other people to learn to code when they're being laid off. But
generally,
Anyways.
if somebody's being let go because of bad reporting or
Right.
whatever, the organization will put out a statement like, "Hey, this happened. We're sorry, and this person no longer works here."
right.
Like-
hey, maybe that would say if they did do that, man, we would have saved them from a couple lawsuits.
Well,
Who
and
knows?
it's because for the most part, and I can't speak for everybody, but media organizations want to be upfront about things. Like, if you find out that I'm hiding the fact that we fired this guy because he was faking stories, why are you going to believe anything else I did after that? Because I tried to cover that up.
right.
Like, it's my job to reveal what's being uncovered, not to try and cover my own stuff. And no matter how much or how bad that is, you got to be open and honest, or nobody's going to trust you. And as a journalist, all you have is your name.
Well, thank you for that. That's good information. I'd like to once again say DV Radio. We are on DV Radio, and they are partnered with the DV Farm. They're a good charity. It's a VA homeless. I don't know if I would, go to DV Farm and check it out. Just Google DV Farm. You'll find a bunch of stuff, and it's good stuff. It's my charity of choice. When we use Amazon, we use Smile.Amazon, and DV Farm's my charity of choice. If you're curious, go ahead and look it up. It benefits homeless veterans, and they recently did this whole winter survival gear kit that they're giving out to homeless veterans. Really good stuff. So totally recommend checking that out. And if you ever want me to read something like this for a sponsor, like maybe you own a store or something, I don't know. We are open to sponsors. Just go ahead and email me at podcast@MediaLitterSandwich.com or even Scott@Toden.com, or reach me out on Facebook. We have a page, we have a group, or anything like that.
Fair enough.
This is a point, I know we've said a couple things that might not be super family friendly with kids in the room, but this is a point where I'm going to open up my phone and start reading comments. There's been several times where I mentioned, hey, you should read the comments on this. It's absolutely horrible. I'm going to go ahead and open my Facebook and go to and check out a couple news stories and just read a couple comments. I just want to say this may be the part. I haven't done this in a very long time. And I can honestly say I haven't pre-read these comments, so I don't know what's going to come out. So if you want to put headphones on now or leave right now, perfectly acceptable. But I'm going to tell you right now, some of these comments are definitely entertaining. So you mind if I go ahead and do that?
No,
if you have
go
a
ahead.
phone, you're welcome to participate. Or I'm just going to hand you the phone because I know there's a couple things in here. I'm going to go to one newspaper that we mentioned. I'm not even. Can I mention them right now?
Yeah, it's better too. That way, if people want to verify you're not making up the comments.
Oh, I totally want to make them up. No, I don't.
Now, he's looking at a story on the Detroit Free Press's Facebook page.
Yeah, because they're local to me. I read this Facebook page all the time, and oh my God, people's comments. Since we're talking about Covington suing Washington Post, I'm going to go ahead and read some of these comments. And if you didn't believe me that some of these people are doubling down and still totally against these kids, just some of these comments are horrible. Just randomly, I'm not going to read the names of the people are saying them. I'm just going to read some of these things. I hope they lose and have to pay the lawyers' fees for Washington Post. Those little spoil snots.
It's actually not as bad as I would have expected.
Now, if I go into this thread,
and I know you're just looking randomly and mostly at top level comments.
Oh, I saw something really good in that earlier, but good. Hit the liberals with lawsuits. That jumped the gun instead of waiting for all the facts to come out. You can't deny some of that. I'm trying to.
No, but I would also point out that, like the Detroit, you're on the Free Press site, which is the liberal paper in town. But the Detroit News covered the same story in nearly the same way.
Right.
And that's the conservative paper in town. So, like,
hey, that's something I didn't know. I didn't realize that the two were parted like that.
I mean, it's not like an official, like,
okay.
but if you
we have meetings to make sure we're in the right part.
But if you look historically, the news coverage tends to lean conservative, and the free coverage tends to lean liberal. And that's not neither good nor bad. That's just a fact. And but they both covered the story in similar ways.
The kid needs a grin slapped off his face. We've heard that one over and over again. This boy was disrespectful, point blank. I swear, another illusion of white privilege. Wait, but if you're trying to prove that this is white privilege, why would it be an illusion? Or is this the illusion of white privilege because we know what really happened where he actually wasn't disrespectful, but yet they're calling him... Can you, like, decode this for me? I don't understand. They're disrespectful, but it's an illusion of white privilege.
I can't specifically, and on
That's
top
why
of,
I love reading comments.
And on top of that, looking
Make my
down
head
some of the
hurt.
comments, because there's like 15 responses to this one, it looks like either a bunch of people have you blocked or have deleted their posts.
Probably
because this woman has like 7 responses in a row where she's actually naming somebody she's responding to, but their posts aren't here.
I'm noticing that a lot lately. If it was a one-time thing, I would think, oh yeah, someone has me blocked. But I'm seeing it over and over again. Or that person just has to be very, very popular and everywhere.
And I would point out that the person that made this comment is not white.
Okay.
And like one of the responses, which again is her responding to somebody else, but that other comment's gone. Says, the fact that you don't realize white privilege is real and not imagined is proof that you're ensconced in it. Any white person who doesn't realize that they are afforded certain opportunities because they are white is either ignorant or in denial. And while I can't necessarily deny that, I mean, it's true to a certain extent. I mean,
their first comment still has me. I don't know.
well, and that's what I'm confused by, because that one's actually well put.
Okay.
And the first one is just confusing me. Because the first one is not well written.
That valet just threw something into that car. Okay. They're all good. I have a big window in front of me looking at downtown Detroit. And the valets for the huge shout out to Foundation Hotel. And the toss wasn't a mean toss. I think the person just dropped something and he was making sure he got it. Yeah, I have ADD sometimes. It's okay. Oh, man. Let me find one more here.
On the same story, or you're looking for a different story?
I do the same story here. You go ahead and read this one. That one right there.
This kid is going to get appointed to some political position. Shame. The pause and emphasis was added by me, because there's actually no grammar on this at all. And then the very next comment says this should be considered a fallacious lawsuit and thrown out. I have to admit that I don't know the definition of fallacious off the top of my head. I'm assuming it's similar to frivolous.
Yeah, that's what I assume too.
But I don't know officially.
Okay, let me pick another. let's pick another article here. Okay, that's a funny one, but I'm not going to. Basically, an article having to tell people about another article that was from a fake news site and talk about how the police had to say, hey, you know that thing you keep asking us about? Yeah, that was from a fake news site, a satire.
I've had to cover some of those myself.
Is it really that huge?
Well, I cover a predominantly Muslim community, so there's lots of fake sites where people make up stuff about them and Sharia law and all kinds of stuff. Okay. And typically our response generally is to ignore it. But sometimes if the story happens to get picked up by somebody else that didn't realize it was fake, once it starts to spread, then I kind of feel it's my responsibility to try and help quash it. But I also don't want to be like, hey, this website, blah, 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 blah.com is spreading false news. Because I don't want to give them the attention.
Right. I'm trying to find now I did find the news story talking about Cobo Hall changed his name since it's literally right to our right here. But I saw another, here's the one I'm looking for. Another thing concerning Cobo Hall kind of. So Autorama is held there. And the city of Detroit had said no to a Smokey and the Bandit tribute stunt because Cobo Hall's inside that movie where they do this car stunt, jumps over a ramp. And I guess the car had Confederate flag on the license plate or the state of Georgia. I'm not.
Okay, yeah, well, one quick thing. Cobo Hall's not in the movie.
Oh, it's not? Well, it was on the...
No,
That's that's a clip, right?
No, that is from 2 or 3 years ago when they did a Dukes of Hazzard version of the same stunt jump at the show.
See, I'm not getting on news source.
So a couple years ago they did Dukes of Hazzard, and this was before the Dukes of Hazzard controversy where they stopped selling the replica General Lee with the flag on it. So knowing that was a controversy now, the organizers of this of the show decided to we'll do Smokey and the Bandit instead.
Right.
We'll make the Firebird instead of the General Lee, and
not the same car. I don't know if there was a Confederate flag on that one. I know it's not on it. Someone said it was on the license plate.
And I've been a big fan of the Smokey and the Bandit movies, literally my entire life. The first one came out the same year as Star Wars. I have all 7 on DVD. There was 3 theatrical ones.
Okay.
The first 2 starred Burt Reynolds, and then there was 4 made-for-TV ones made in the 90s that were on the Speed Channel or whatever. That I remember seeing as a kid. They weren't very good, but when I bought the DVD set, it came with all 7. So.
Oh, okay.
But I can honestly tell you, I've never paid that much attention to know there was a Confederate flag on the car until I saw this story yesterday. And yeah, there's a small one on the license plate. It would have been a matter. It would have been a matter of don't put the replica license plate on the car, and they could have approved the jump. Instead, they didn't.
I love these comments because there's a lot of comments referring to the Confederate flag. It's no longer about why they're not doing the stunt. It's talking about the Confederate flag. So I'm trying to scroll through here about more of the stunt. Here's one saying, why is Burt Reynolds mentioned with a pic of the General Lee? Now we just figured out why.
Right.
So Detroit won't honor Burt Reynolds because of the license plate on a car he drove in a movie. What a bunch of 2 ellipses. So 6 dots after that.
In 1977, the movie came out. FY also, and it was set between Georgia and Texas. Like Smokey and the Bandit. Like the Bandit lived in Texas, but Bo Darville. I know a lot more about this than I should.
So I'm learning.
And the thing was, he had to go to Texarkana, Texas, pick up a truckload of Coors beer and bring it back for I believe it was the Southern 500, which is Atlanta Motor Speedway. Like the guy that was making the bet with him offered him a brand new semi truck as payment if he could do it in, I think it was 48 hours, might have been 24. I don't remember that detail. But so him and his buddy, he went and bought the blocker car. His buddy was the truck driver. And they went and picked up the beer, had to bring it back. It was actually bootlegging because you couldn't bring Coors beer this side of the Mississippi back then. Okay. And that was the whole premise of the movie. That was the whole premise.
Okay. I'm going to do 2 more because we have a time limit in here. Okay, I'll let you read this one because this proves how confusing it is when you run a news story with a different car as the thumbnail. which is this car from Dukes and Hazards as a thumbnail, and not Smokey and the Bandit.
But I would also almost guarantee you, if you click on it, it mentions that it was from like the 2017 show.
Right. This one right here, I believe.
PC moronic behavior. It's a flag on a car that is a replica of the Dukes of Hazzard car. Stop being a bunch of you-know-what and grow a set.
Okay, well, maybe that wasn't the one I was looking at. Well, yeah, Dukes of Hazzard. We're talking about Smokey and the Bandit.
Right, but most people, they saw the picture and they know the General Lee had the flag on the hood.
They didn't read the article.
Right. but I would almost guarantee you, if you were to scroll up and actually open the article,
yeah,
the cut line on the photo would either mention like that it was from a couple years ago or that it's a file picture from...
Right. But it just showed, like, people, if you're going to comment on something, read the article. At least skim it. Have an idea what they're talking about.
And almost nobody does if they ask a question. I literally put the most important information in my stories, the second and third paragraphs generally.
Okay.
Because you'll have the lead that kind of tells like blah, blah, blah is happening. Then the second and third graph will mention like the when, where, and then you go down from there. Mm-hmm. Almost every article I share somewhere, somebody asks me, oh, when is this happening? Where did it happen? Like, so if I'm writing about an event that's coming up, it's literally normally the second or third sentence that says when and where. And I still have people that ask me and they're like, oh, well, I didn't read it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll finish this one up with this comment or comment and reply to. I'm super sensitive and this flares up my PTSD. So good for them. And of course the reply is, you're joking, right? Right?
So were they?
People, it was on the internet, so it has to be true. Hey, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think of this Toad and Read section. Dave, you're clearing so much up for me. It's always nice having a professional reporter here. And you already know how to code, right?
I can do very, very basic HTML and some C++.
All right, cool. So we're all covered there.
Because I'm super old and learned C++. Probably nobody under the age of like 30 even knows what that is.
I love the fact that you're walking down Woodward and you see Grand Circus that has all these classes on IT. And now this has been there for quite a while, but it's written on one of the windows saying learn to code as an advertisement to take classes there. And I just love in the recent weeks how that's... It's still there, so I'm wondering if that's ever going to be taken down. I'm sure other people are giggling at it. I'm sure somebody is giggling at it besides me.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm just that big of a geek. Well, Dave, please throw out whatever socials you want to throw out.
Well, and it's completely not media related, but I've mentioned my side business a couple times, Turtle Trinkets Jewelry on Facebook.
They may have sponsored us in the past.
We did formally sponsor the original iteration of the show. We may sponsor again in the future. Depends on, how often you have me back.
Well, see, there's the disclaimer. They did not sponsor this episode.
Well, we weren't even asked, but...
No, you weren't. You weren't.
But anyway, it's Turtle Trinkets Jewelry on Facebook. We sell lots of jewelry, as you can tell in the name, toys, minifigures, iron-on patches, all kinds of stuff. Or if you want to see some of my news coverage, again, it is mostly Metro Detroit. You can follow me on Twitter at NHDaveH. And not wanting to throw out the newspaper name specifically, I can't really share anymore.
If they Google your name, they'll find you.
Yeah, I'm not hard to find. Although there are at least 2 other Dave Herndons that work across the country in the media.
Okay.
Including the editor of the New Mexico magazine. Totally not me.
I am totally easy to find. All you have to do is Google Toaden, Toaden, and you'll be able to find Toaden.com, YouTube.com/ToadenK, where you can listen and watch. You can watch the show on YouTube, or you can listen to it on many, many podcast apps. Please comment, rate, subscribe. If you do subscribe on YouTube, hit that little bell for notifications, because subscribing doesn't mean anything anymore. At least if you hit the bell, you might be notified when a new episode comes out. I don't know. But hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And may the algorithms be in your favor.